Hey there, Zlatko here from Taco Agency and the host of the Taco Talk podcast. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. I had a chance to talk to Kevin Wild. He is the head of e-commerce partnerships at Sezzle. He absolutely loves what he does, which is why I wanted to talk to him about his process and all the other good stuff that he has going on. Also, what's a bit more fascinating to me is that he has his private pilot license. A little bit about Sezzle. They're one of the best payment options for any e-commerce business. It allows customers to make payments on a purchase while the merchant receives all of their money up front. Absolutely no risk to the merchant. So if you're listening and you are running an e-commerce business and want to increase your overall conversion rate, check out Sezzle. And also, they work with CBD companies and other industries where your traditional credit card processor might not work due to regulations. Kevin has an awesome outlook on life, and I truly enjoyed chatting with him. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. Cool. I think we're good. All right, cool. Kevin, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you jumping on the Taco Talk podcast. I know you and I have had a chance to, work in different environments, a couple different companies you've been at. I'll let you kind of touch on that, but go ahead and give people an introduction in terms of what you currently do, what your role is, and anything else that you think people might be interested in.
Yeah, certainly. Well, thanks for having me on, Z. It's always a pleasure when we get to connect.
Absolutely,
Yes.
man.
So my name is, as you mentioned, my name is Kevin Wild. Currently, I'm the head of e-commerce partnerships at Sezzle. So what that means really is that I'm engaging on behalf of Sezzle with a lot of e-commerce platforms, talking with various platforms about integrating Sezzle, our payment method, natively into their system or as an app. So a lot of my discussions are kind of like a cool cross reference of like technical discussions, but also of business. It's kind of where I found my niche in terms of my career, is focusing both on the cross reference between business and technology. So yeah, most of my days spent on the phone, looking at contracts, sending emails, that sort of thing. Maybe not for everybody, but I certainly love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of people probably wouldn't want to engage in all kinds of contracts, but I do know a few that actually thrive in that area. So that's awesome to hear. So tell me a little bit about how you got to Sezzle. What kind of attracted you to get there, and what have been some obstacles that you kind of encountered and things that you've been able to come in and sort of fix on that front? Because I know as an agency myself, I know it's not easy to work with us sometimes because we have so much other shit going on all the time. So I just want to know kind of what you've encountered and how you kind of overcome those things, because I know that there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to a platform like yourself.
Yeah, certainly. The story about how I got to Sezzle, I guess, is a little bit of a long one, because I largely came to Sezzle because of my experience at previous companies working in partnerships. So I really wouldn't have ended up at Sezzle if I hadn't had those previous experiences of working with partners in this space of partnerships and business development. A lot of the success you have or can have is based upon who you know and what contacts you have. People like dealing with people they know, and people like dealing with people that they like, right? You know that as an agency, you prefer to deal with people who you'd like to chat on the phone with.
Right.
Um, right. And so over the past 6 or 7 years, I've been able to meet a lot of awesome people like Yuzi, and those are relationships that I love and really focus my career on. And when I came to a company like Sezzle, it's relatively easy for me to get started because I can just call up all the existing contacts I have and say, hey, here's where I am now. Would love to continue working together, or would love to to do this together. Versus when somebody is new in this space, when I was just getting started, it was a lot of much different story. It was a lot of cold calling. It was a lot of reaching out, looking at directories, trying to find anyone who would listen to me. And it can be hard to build relationships when you do have metrics to hit. It's like the balance of trying to build a relationship that's not completely focused on metrics, but also trying to hit targets that your company has set for you. So that was certainly a struggle in the beginning, but obviously as time has gone on, these relationships that I formed have really just been irreplaceable for what I've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And would you say, like, at Sezzle currently, how much And I don't know if the specific metrics in a case like this, but does a lot of your guys' business, I mean, obviously there's people coming directly to you. Does a lot of your business come from a lot of these agency partnerships, or is it mostly like people just come because of the offerings that you guys have, being able to purchase something up front, whether it's a high ticket item on their store, and they just come in to find you and say, hey, I need this on my store. How can I, get it installed and all that? Or is it more so like nurturing these relationships with partners and agencies to, bring these clients or merchants into your wheelhouse? What would you say is, if you had to put a percentage to it? I mean, I'm not expecting you to know that off the top. Maybe you do.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. You know what? The way that I look at it is I think it takes a village, and maybe some people who have to work on budgets and numbers don't like my response very much, because they want to say like, where did this one sale come from? Who does it attribute to? But the way that I look at it, as somebody who's worked in marketing before, who's been the client, who's been, an agency, and somebody who now is working in partnerships, is that in order to acquire a merchant, it takes a lot of different factors. And yeah, that introduction can come from an agency, but lots of times they've already heard of us because we've done a lot of marketing campaigns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, they didn't know enough about us or trust us enough yet to really reach out. But then that agency recommendation was enough to just push it over the edge, right? And then, so it could be a combination of a variety of different things. And obviously, for us, our partners are incredibly important to our success. And we get a lot of our business from that. But there's a lot of different angles to it, and it's not as simple as just, a straightforward channel. There's, many different parts of our company that are all contributing to, getting the Sezzle name out there and making sure that, everyone knows about us or has heard about us. Because I'll tell you, when you have a call with a merchant, and it doesn't matter what you're selling, if they've
Right.
heard about you before you have that call, you're gonna have a way easier time selling your product than if they have no idea who you are or what you do. You're
Right.
you're fighting an uphill battle right from the beginning.
Yeah, love it. And how big is Sezzle at the moment? How many employees are you guys at?
Z, I think it's around like 150, 160. Not something I keep track of too much.
Right.
At my previous companies, I was in the office, so every new person who started, I'd see their desk. I was kind of, I could kind of keep a mental picture. But obviously, in this remote world we're living in, people are starting, and I really don't, you don't see them right now. So it's yeah,
It's a new
I
name.
think it's
It's a
somewhere
new name
around.
in Slack, huh? It's just you see this little icon just pop up in Slack. You're like, hey, there's a new person.
That's pretty much exactly what it is. So yeah, somewhere around that figure, sure.
That's awesome. And then and if I can just kind of get an idea, what do you guys, in terms of obviously being a product company, obviously is Shopify? Would you say Shopify is kind of your biggest partner in that sense, where you guys do a lot of your business on that platform, or would you say it's like BigCommerce or any of these other platforms?
Well, it's certainly a mixture. I think, when it comes, for example, what I do, what I talked about earlier, is developing relationships with platforms. My job is to work with as many as
Right.
platforms as possible, and really to make that question as difficult to answer as possible, because we work with so many platforms, and that's really the case. I think there's no doubt Shopify has seen a lot of success, and a lot of merchants are signing up with them lately, and really, we're looking at any e-commerce platform that is experiencing a lot of growth. And I think, given what's going on in the world right now, that's all of them. So,
Yeah.
Shopify's been a good partner for us. BigCommerce has, and that list, honestly, is probably 24 platforms long at least. So,
Wow.
again, they all come together and become very important for us, because as a payment method, we rely upon the e-commerce platform really as any other e-commerce technology does. So it's really important for us to be, everywhere we can, to support, the widest range of merchants.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And do you mind just taking us through kind of the customer journey when somebody does have Sezzle sort of integrated on their platform as a merchant? So I'm selling, let's say, snowboards or whatever that is. How does that process work with you guys in terms of collecting that payment side of things and making sure that, you guys are obviously keeping a good track record of everything that's going on. And, obviously people are basically basically able to take the product off the out of the inventory before they maybe even pay $1 to anybody, and then you guys have to go upon yourself and collect that. Do you want to just kind of take me through that process of how that works on a user type basis?
Yeah, certainly. I think, if someone's familiar with traditional financing, this will seem a lot more smooth because
Right.
historically, traditional financing is quite complex and there's a lot of fine print and other details. But the really the experience from a customer perspective, if they are new to Sezzle, is they would land on one of our merchant partners, a website
Hmm.
where Sezzle's offered, and they would see on the product page, on the cart page, that if they're buying, say, a sweater for $100, they could buy that sweater for $100, or they can make 4 payments of $25. So we find that this often relates to higher conversion rates and more people adding more to cart, because when you give people a more flexible way to pay over time, generally they spend more because their buying power has increased. Once they get to the checkout, they would see the option pay with Sezzle right next to PayPal and credit card and all the other
Hmm.
traditional payment methods. When they click it, the process is incredibly straightforward. We just ask them for 4 pieces of information: just their name, their email address, their phone number, and their date of birth. So all things that hopefully everybody can remember off the top of their head.
Right.
Um, we don't look at their credit history. We don't do any of that. We simply just are looking to make sure, are they a legit person? Has their email address been around for a while? Is their phone number active? And based upon those 4 pieces of information, we approve them. We actually approve on average either like high 80s or low 90% of people.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so vast majority of merchants will get approved, obviously based upon how much they're asking for. But and at that point, they would say they're approved. They make their first payment. So in that case, $25 or the $100, and then we would schedule payments every 2 weeks from that. So 3 other payments of $25. The customer, the shopper, doesn't pay anything, so they don't pay any fees. There's no interest. There's nothing. It's a completely free payment method for them, and the merchant gets paid the money up front. So as soon as we've collected that first $25 payment, we give the merchant $100,
Oh, wow.
even though we haven't gotten the other 75 yet. We give the merchant $100 and take on all the risk. So, let's say I couldn't make a payment, or I was a fraudulent customer, or I processed a chargeback. Sezzle's taking on all that risk. So I often tell merchants that with Sezzle, this is really the most stress-free way of accepting money, because there's no way they're not keeping that money. With credit
Right.
cards, there's obviously all these things that could happen, but like with Sezzle, we're taking on all the risks. So they're getting that money regardless of whether we get the money or not.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just for whatever it's worth, we're actually working with you to on the CBD side of things, which is another, I think, important thing to mention, because there are so many restrictions and different things in this marketplace of CBD and hemp and all this, that I think sometimes it's hard for people to get approved through any other kind of credit card processing methods. Like I know Stripe and a lot of these players, they don't allow it. PayPal doesn't allow it. So I know for us, we're working to build bundles and higher tiered products to get Sezzle involved in that side of things, to make sure that we can offer people, like if they need CBD, and obviously these products are not low cost products. We're selling things at like $70-$80 a pop, and it can go all the way up to almost like $6,000 depending on how much people are ordering. And I think the fact that it is something health related, and it can help people and their pets. I think it's one of those things where if somebody needs it, they don't have to stress about, oh my God, I need to pay X amount of dollars right now. So and I think that that's awesome. And how much would you say you guys, when you guys take on that risk, because that is a pretty big risk, man, especially when you're talking about, high tiered items like maybe $2,000 or whatever it is. How much of that do you guys actually see like being fraudulent? Because it surprises me, honestly, that you guys don't take some sort of like, background check or something like that, or a credit check. Like how much of that does end up kind of biting you in the ass, for sake of better words?
Yeah, so you know what? So like Sezzle's a publicly traded company, so I think all these numbers, if anyone was
Yeah.
interested, they could go back and they could search. I think it's below 1%.
Wow.
So it's really low. And again, I don't know that number off heart, so I'd recommend you could check it out in our earnings reports. I think it's there. But it's incredibly low. And
That's awesome.
we get asked that by merchants sometimes, like what prevents somebody from just buying something and not paying you back? And really the main thing is we just don't let them use the service anymore. And
Yeah.
the vast majority of people, I guess, want to continue using the service so they continue making the payments. And so far it's not been a problem at all.
Oh, I love it, man. I love it. So, internally, what do you guys, in terms of, having over 150 employees or whatever that number is, like, what is your guys' kind of process of like communication? Is it all through Slack? Do you guys have internal tools, and do you guys use like project management tools for, development and different things like that? What would you say is kind of the core competency of tools within Sezzle that maybe you touch on every day, or that you at least know about? Because I'm sure you're not maybe in the development tickets and all this other stuff. So
Yeah, you know what? I think, as somebody in my role, I kind of break it into like two tools. Like there's tools that I use and there's tools that obviously, we use as a company. Because I think that, as somebody who focuses on relationships, I have my own tools that I like to use to like keep notes down, remember things, and to track things. They're comfortable with what I'm using, and I use a lot of them for personal as well. So it's just kind of a natural.
hmm
But obviously, yeah, I mean, communication tools like Slack and Google Documents and Salesforce, that sort of thing, are obviously critical to the company. Um, use a lot of those tools for transferring information. I think as you get bigger, your company and everybody in the company possesses more information, and it's harder to have those one-on-one conversations. When I remember, my previous company, when I was, like one of the first 30 employees there, we were all in a room. So if I needed something, I could just yell at somebody literally could yell at them and they'd yell back, right? That's different, right? When you become a bigger company and you've got offices and rooms and multiple offices, or when you're remote, it's really important to have all that data in a central way and accessible, so that somebody doesn't have to come and ask me, what's the status on this, this thing. They can just look it up themselves. So
Right.
I know that's something that's always on the top of my list, is where can I, um, put my information that's in my head. It's often, I think people refer to it as like the hit by a bus strategy. If you're hit by a bus, how much of the information just is gone with you? Um,
Right.
maybe a little, sad way of looking at it, depressing way of looking at it, but that's often how I've looked about it. Like if Kevin has to leave for like 6 months, you know, what things would die because there's just nobody there who knows about it.
Right, right. Yeah, that's kind of how we think about things as well. As we start to grow, people coming on board, and it's like, yeah, what if something does happen, or unfortunately people get sick and things happen, and during these COVID times it's pretty crazy too. People are taking breaks to be with their families and different things. So no, I think that's super interesting. What are some of kind of the next things that is Sezzle that you guys are focusing on as like as a company, and kind of the growth aspect of things? Is it more just finding like viable ways to get integrated with a lot of these different platforms that are popping up, or what is kind of the next generation of things that you guys might be focusing on?
Well, I think from our perspective, Z, like this space that we're in, this buy now, pay later space, it's growing incredibly fast. It's growing faster than credit card adoption is right now, which is like there's not much that's growing faster than credit cards, obviously. And people who are in the Gen Z category, so
Right.
younger than you and I are the people who are really utilizing this product a lot. And I think from our perspective, as time moves along, our focus is obviously on making Sezzle available, everywhere, right? Like
hmm
that's our ideal scenario, and likely unrealistic, but our ideal scenario is that Sezzle is available everywhere. Every retailer has it integrated, right? And I think that's the way that buy now pay later is going to be. I think that um, in Australia you see pretty much every merchant where this technology is really taken off. Years ago, pretty much every merchant has a buy now pay later solution. In North America, it's still pretty it's growing fast, but it's still pretty early. And I think that in 5 years we may get to that point where every single merchant you go to has this sort of offering enabled, right?
Right.
Or they have multiple different offerings, right? They may have a few different options, because shoppers, as we continue to expand our product offering, our merchants, we get more and more merchants signing up for our service, and the amount of customers that are going to be going to merchants saying, "I want Sezzle," is going to continue to increase. And it happened with PayPal, right? People really enjoyed using PayPal on eBay in the beginning because they trusted it. And, I think a lot of the reasons why PayPal was so successful is because the merchants demanded it, right? And now, like, if you don't have PayPal offered on your online store, like, you're missing out because people like to use PayPal, right? So that's kind of where we think, things are going. And obviously we're doing everything we can to make that happen, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the good thing that compare, not to knock on PayPal too much, but you always hear kind of the horror stories where people pay with PayPal and then the merchant ends up, I look through Twitter all the time and people are constantly complaining about how PayPal's holding, six figures in their reserve account for like 180 days where, for whatever reason, risk reasons or whatever it is, when, some of these companies are legit companies. And the fact that, you guys aren't in that boat, I think that's much more viable for anybody, that's running a business and, being able to get their money immediately. It's like instant gratification for both ends, right? It's like the merchant gets the money right away. You guys pay them out, no risk. And then the person who's purchasing it is getting the instant gratification of not having to pay the full amount up front and breaking that up, and maybe buying more from the merchant. So I definitely think it's a win-win solution. And I think that's awesome. What kind of industry, I mean, on the Sezzle website, I noticed that there was like a lot of apparel companies and, all these. Is there any industry at the moment that you guys don't support? And then the other kind of follow-up question to that is, where's the industry that you guys are thriving the most? Is it apparel? Is it, tools, gear? Like where do you see kind of most of your growth?
I mean, yeah. So like the short answer in terms of who we don't support is, as long as it's legal, on a federal
Right.
level, then we do support it. Like that's, as long as the merchant's selling something legal, then we'll support it. So,
Right.
You mentioned we do support high risk. You mentioned CBD, vitamins, supplements, that sort of space, and
Hmm.
many others. So quite a wide range. And I think when you're looking at the sort of growth that this space is seeing, I think in the beginning it was mostly, fashion and apparel was a big industry, or big vertical for everyone in this space. You kind of saw them adopt it first, and I'm not exactly sure why that happened, other than I think, you know, initially people who were adopting buy now pay later were probably people who were buying stuff that maybe they did not need as much, they just wanted, so they're trying to find a way to justify it. So, obviously I think in some ways fashion might fall into that, where people are buying things that they just want, necessarily they don't need them. But as time has gone on, like, it's just exploded across whole verticals, right? Outdoor goods, sporting goods are obviously big. Things like uniforms, right? People are gonna buy uniforms for the kids. Those can be expensive, and they want to be able to split them up over time. Um, Beauty. You mentioned CBD. I'm trying to think of others, but it's there's not many verticals that we're not seeing success in. And really, where our product plays the best is in a smaller loan. So because of the fact that we don't charge interest and we don't charge loans and we don't take people to collections and we're so consumer friendly, we do focus on a smaller average order value. So pretty much anyone selling anything less than like $1,000 would be a good fit for us. But if you're selling mattresses, or televisions, things that are quite easily get to several $1,000s, that's where we're probably not as good of a fit for, because it's harder for us to approve it, right?
Of course.
Considering there's no interest, right? So that's when you see those $10,000 items, there's always interest charged, there's admin fees, all that stuff, because they're trying to mitigate their risk on such an expensive item. So where we thrive is certainly, in the smaller AOV, and people split $20 payments, $20 purchases, like
Hey,
that's, I
yeah.
was surprised before joining Sezzle. I didn't think people would do that, but people, and it's just, they like it and it works for them, and they'll split anything, right? It's less about the order, the cost, but more about the convenience.
Absolutely. Are you guys seeing like an uptick in like the food industry at all? Like people jumping on from like the restaurant world and setting up e-commerce stores and being like, hey, we can use this for, the type of Instacart type of situations, or restaurants selling, whatever it is, wine or anything like that. You guys seeing anything during like these crazy times that are like an uptick in that sort of industry?
Not that I'm aware of, Z. We do work with some alcohol merchants, kind of on a, one by one approval basis. I haven't specifically given any focus on the food industry myself, not to
Hmm.
say that other people in the company might be focusing on it. So, I might be unaware of that and likely am. Um, but it wouldn't surprise me, right? And I think travel and really this sort of payment method is in my opinion universal. Like it really
Right.
is the evolution of a credit card. So I think some some verticals like restaurants may take a lot longer. And from my perspective, and again, not going off of facts, but just my opinion is, in a lot of restaurant industries, there's a lot of platforms to support, right? A lot of
Right.
restaurants use different POSs, and like the whole POS technology industry is very difficult to crack because there's so many old legacy systems. They're expensive to set up, and it can be incredibly difficult to integrate with. So, not to mention, there's multiple different versions of each, and people often are running on old versions. So, to go and integrate with restaurants directly is a lot of effort. So that's when you're looking to more companies that are like maybe the food delivery companies. But then there's challenges there. So I think no doubt something that's going to happen, and just not something that I'm currently focusing on or looking into. But um, yeah.
Yeah. No, do you guys currently integrate with any of the POS systems like Shopify or anything like that? Are you guys directly in there? Or Square, I would say even.
Yeah, not we it's kind of a one by one basis for us. Z, I think
Okay.
um, we approach it like when a merchant comes to us and says, "Hey, we need to support this POS platform." We'll explore it. Um, some POS platforms don't support it or can't support it. Like I think Shopify. I don't think there's no way for us to integrate through Shopify, and some of those platforms they are pretty locked down. Still very new, right? They're
Right, right.
Shopify POS is still relatively new and growing and expanding, and I'm sure that will change over time. But um, it's something we're always keeping an eye on. It's a different experience, right? When you do that application online, it's easy. You're sitting in front of a computer, you can type it out. But when if you've ever applied for financing in store, it can be kind of tedious, right? Like typically, you'd have to, you go fill out the paperwork, and then they would type it into their computer, and then you'd wait 10 minutes, and they say, okay, you're approved. Here's your, you know, um, and obviously that would be more seamless with us, but it's still kind of a different process in terms of someone's not at their computer, they're at their phone, they're at a POS. How does that work? I think,
Right,
I
right,
think there's
right, right.
no like, there's no like one size fits all for POS yet,
Makes
because
sense.
it is so fragmented.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. No, that's really interesting. Yeah, I know that a lot of companies out there are having issues, like you said, cracking that POS system is just there's so many different versions and what people are capable of doing and all this other stuff. So that's definitely an interesting area to explore. No, that's really awesome. So I do want to switch gears. You got to tell me about your whole pilot situation, man. How did you get into that and when did you start doing that? How did you get your license and all that good stuff? Because I actually have somebody that's a pilot on my team as well, and it's to me it's amazing that people are doing that for themselves. Like I would be scared shitless to be honest with you.
I'll I'll tell you after I tell you this. I'll tell you a story of like really the
Yeah.
only time I was really scared when I was piloting. But um, yeah, early in my career, like most people, when you come out of graduation, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I'd be doing something. So I initially went to university. I went to university for a very short amount of time, and almost immediately realized, what am I doing? I don't know what I want to do, and somehow giving money to a university or college just doesn't make me feel like I'm going to figure that out. It
Are
didn't
you a
feel like I
fellow
was going to find it.
dropout? Are you a fellow dropout like me?
I don't even know if I would say a dropout, because I was there for 2 months, month and a
Oh,
half, and
okay.
I realized
I
right
have a
away
lot of
this is
respect for you, dude. I have a lot of respect for you because I honestly wish that I could have done that. I waited for like 2.5 years and I was like, you know what? This is just not for me, man. Like, it's
yeah.
crazy.
You know what? The one thing Z is, when I know, right? Like
Right.
I can mull in decisions a long time, but when I know something, I do it quickly, and I knew that that at least right then that I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was basically just spending money I didn't have to do that. So I did that. That's when I started working at Apple. I started doing business sales for Apple and was enjoying that there. And I can't tell you what really clicked about being a pilot, but just something made me feel like that was a career I wanted to do. I've enjoyed using my hands. Being a hands-on person. Often I've enjoyed more literal jobs where you just do a job and it's less, about being, less ambiguous and more literal.
Right.
So I went there for a test run. So if you go to really any pilot school, at least in Canada, they'll give you a free flight. They'll take you up there. You can control the plane, all for free, just to give you a chance to try it out. And I liked it. I loved it. And I got a scholarship at the time to do it. So I started doing it, and I got my pilot's license. And the way it works is essentially you get your private pilot license, meaning you can fly like 3 or 4 people around. And that takes you it's like 40 to 60 hours of flying. But if you want to become a commercial pilot, you have to get like 200 to 300 hours of flying. If you actually want to fly,
Right.
for work, get paid to fly. So what people do in our area is they generally would go to a rural area, get a low paying job, and then they would get paid to fly and collect those hours, so on and so forth. And that was my goal. And it just so happened at the time that when I was working at Apple, I actually met my now wife. And pretty soon after meeting, we decided we want to move in together. And things just happened, and I just decided I just didn't want to move away at this time. I wanted to stay in and
Right.
spend more time with her, and just life happened. So I ended up leaving Apple for a job in marketing, and leaving that job in marketing for job in partnerships. And then now I'm in a different job in partnerships. And now I'm with my wife, and we have a daughter, and life is good. But in another life I would have been a pilot. It just, life didn't turn out that way.
Right, right. That's awesome. I mean, how often do you go and fly? Do you have to keep a certain amount of hours to keep that rolling or what?
Yeah, so you do. I need to do more. The problem is like cost. Like, so when you're flying a private airplane, like, and let's say the cheapest one you can, you're paying for gas, and the gas alone is like $300-400 an hour. It's probably
Oh
more expensive,
shit.
time goes up. So it costs a lot of money to go up and fly an airplane. So my wife would never go with me, obviously, because she doesn't want us to both perish in a plane crash and have our daughter be parentless. But
Right, right.
for me, it's like, yeah, I got to go do it. But there's less of a reason to go do it now, considering I'm not pursuing it as a job. But I will tell you, I was going to tell you the time I was scared is
Yeah.
one of the last flights I went on. I was flying by myself, and long story short, a storm came in, and like,
Oh
I
no.
had never flown in a storm before, right? Like, it just so happened that all the other times I've flown had been just nice out, right? And you don't know when weather's going to roll in. We were hoping to be a quick flight to get in before the storm roll in, and I swear, just it came in before I knew it. It came in so quickly, and it was just gray everywhere. And when you do your pilot license, you actually have to fly blind. They do a thing where they put a mask on you, so that you can't see your surroundings. All you can see is the gauges. So based upon the gauges, based upon what your air traffic controller tells you, you have to be able to get home and land, right? So you're looking
Oh
at things like,
shit.
what direction am I in? How fast am I going? How far am I off the ground? And you need to be able to figure out, where am I in terms of the airport. So that was one of those scenarios where it just so happened I couldn't see anything, and I was getting down to really low, like 500 meters, and I still couldn't see anything. And I essentially had to completely fly the plane blind. And when I landed, I remember coming down, and just like, and when I say 200 meters, you're like, okay, that's pretty high, but it's really not when you're in an airplane.
Right,
I remember
right.
just just the clouds opened up, and I'm like, please God, not be in an open field. And sure enough, I was just on the runway, and I landed, and it was all safe. But I certainly, yeah, I did
Did
not
your
feel
life
safe.
did your life flash in front of your eyes at that point?
I would say that's probably the only time I thought about calling up my loved ones and like saying in that moment, like,
Oh
I love you.
shit.
This might be it. But at the same time, I'm like, I was so preoccupied with trying to, that I just didn't have the time. But yeah, probably the only time I feared for my life.
That's crazy, man. I had no idea that they actually make you fly blind. That's pretty insane, man.
Yeah, it's like a mask that they put on. Just, I mean, that's what you have to be able, because when you're high in the sky and you obviously can't see the ground always, you need to be able to understand, the measurements. It's, that's mostly about what flying a plane is. It's understanding those measurements and those relativities, because the actual flying of a plane is not that difficult. It's
Right.
most about, those numbers, that sort of thing.
How many hours did they make you do that for out of like the range to get your license?
Not long. No, just a couple hours. It's
Oh,
not that
okay.
bad. You also have to go and stall a plane, which basically you have to go into basically a free fall, and you turn off the plane, you have the plane just basically fall from the sky, and then you have to restart the plane and basically recover. It's something to make you do too, because at that point when you're falling, it's like your insides are going up through your mouth. You feel sick, and you need to be able to like put everything together and recover. So that's part of the test as well. So it's, obviously they're trying to, really put you in these stress tests, because that's what happens when you're flying. You're, in a
Yeah.
constant stress test.
I believe it. I believe it, man. That's crazy. Wow. I had no idea that I honestly learned more about that today than anything else.
Oh, there you
That's
go.
all there. That's awesome, man. So, in terms of everything happening now in the world, what are you and your family doing for fun wise? Are you guys taking a lot more, time to just, go out on walks and different things like that? What's kind of the life over there right now?
Well, I tell you, Z, I was actually just telling some people, I told a lot of people this. This whole thing, it doesn't feel, I say this whole thing, the whole quarantine,
Yeah.
staying from home, is pretty close to regular life for me, because me and my wife both work from home full time. My
Same with me.
daughter's two, right? Yeah. So my daughter goes to preschool, so she hasn't been able to do that. Um, Really, it's the lack of sports, like no sports. I'm a big sports fan, and that's probably the biggest change for me. But I've been fortunate and blessed to be in a situation where I can continue to work, both me and my wife, and it hasn't affected me too much. But I would say, it's nice. It's summer. We've been outside, going to parks, going for walks. I certainly play enough video games when I get the time, which is, and I try to be creative. I write. I don't know if I told you before, but I've written a novel, so I'm trying to write the sequel to it. And so I try to put some time into that. And yeah, just anything that kind of enhances my skills is something I'm always trying to do.
Have you guys been doing anything differently from the time everyone's been quarantined to like before that? Anything in the general day to day that you guys are like, this has become kind of a regular now that we're doing on a daily basis?
Playing board games. I mean, we've always played a lot of board games, but we've bought a lot more of that.
Yeah.
I've never been a big in the beginning when this happened. We were doing a lot of Zoom calls with friends, and not that I have anything against my friends. I've never been a big Zoom call fan. I guess
Right.
I prefer just not hanging out with anybody, than doing these forced video calls. We're trying to play games, but that's just my style. But you
Yeah.
know that was a change for sure. But we were fortunately technology allowed us to order all our food in, order our groceries in, not have to leave the house. And for us, we were able to spend weeks at home. Like I think there was a 3-week period where I didn't leave the home once.
Wow.
And that's why I'm wearing a hat, because I haven't had a haircut since this started. So yeah, I guess what I realized is I don't really need to leave it home as much as I thought I did.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, that's really awesome. What is that? Can you give us a little insight on the sequel to your novel? Those that have actually read the first one, because I'll be honest, I haven't read it. But can you give us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been a writer. My mom was a writer. She wrote for a newspaper. It's something I've always enjoyed doing. So actually, this was back in 2018. Back in 2018, I realized that for 4 or 5 years in a row, I had the exact same goals. Like every year, in January rolls around, I write like, what are my goals? And for 4 or 5 straight years, the goals were the exact same. And
Wow.
I sat down, I'm like, I haven't done anything. Like what, these past 4 years, I haven't accomplished what I said I was going to do. Like, what am I doing? So I chose one. I said, I'm going to focus on writing a book. I'm going to do this. I had the idea laid out, and I basically just said, I have to write, essentially 1,000 words a day. And then I have to edit 1,000 words a day, and then I write some more, and then just, if I do that, by the time the end of the year rolls around, it'll be done. So that's what I did. And, that's what happened. I kept on it, and the book was done. And by the end of the year, and was really great. And the book it's a fiction book. It's kind of futuristic. It's based upon perspective of two characters, one who's a writer, struggling writer, and the other one who's a scientist. So it's a little science fictiony, in terms of the female main character, is a scientist, is coming up with a new treatment for burn victims to help them, recover their skin tissue and, regain some of their, the facial features that they've lost. And it
Hmm.
turns out that her treatment is more effective than she thought it was. And it actually bring skin tissue back to the form it was at when people were younger. So it makes people look younger, right? People
Oh,
look
wow.
better this. So it kind of becomes this new age plastic surgery. And the writer ties into it because he ends up falling in love with one of the initial test subjects of this treatment, who it works on. And, over time, things start going a little hairy because the treatment doesn't do necessarily all that it thought it would, and there are some side effects. So that really is the core of the story. So working on the sequel now, and
Love it.
yeah, it's exciting.
Did you have some good success with that on like Amazon or anything like that? Did a lot of people purchase it?
I did it all privately.
Oh, you did? Oh, wow.
I never did this goal for a financial gain. I really just did it something I wanted to do. Something I wanted to be able to point to my daughter and say, like, look at, if you have a goal, you can do it. Here you go.
I
So
love that.
I sold copies to people, and basically just said, you just cover the cost of printing and I'll send it to you. Never put it on Amazon, never put it on anything, because for me, it was just more of a passion project rather than, and maybe one day I will, maybe one day I'll release the ebook just to make it easier for people. But I just didn't want to associate a financial goal with that, because I felt if I sold it too quickly, I might be disappointed by how much it sold or the reviews that I got, when really I just wanted to enjoy the fact that I had accomplished what I set out to accomplish.
I could really appreciate that, man. That's like really, really authentic. I love it, man. I love it. Well, I would love to just I'll get in touch with you afterwards. I would love to get a copy of it because I enjoy
Sure.
reading, and no, I think that's awesome, man, and that's really cool. So yeah, man, I appreciate the chat. I know we're rolling up on almost an hour here. Is there anything else that you want to kind of cover or talk about, or anything that I have maybe missed, whether it's personal related, work related, whatever that is?
I don't think so, man. I'm trying to think. Obviously, the podcast show is all about, what people use, technology, that sort of thing. I can ring off probably some quick apps and tools and things that I use on a daily basis, kind of as a
Please
blend between
do.
personal. So I'm primarily, I have a Windows computer, but I'm primarily an Apple guy. So iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Mac, that sort of thing.
Right.
I rely on my calendar. I use an app called Fantastical on all my devices. And it's basically like it syncs with Google Calendar, but it's a really powerful calendar system. It's you can set it up on time so that between 8 to 5 it shows my work calendar, and as it gets to 5 it then transitions to my personal calendar. And there's a lot more powerful features you can do. It just brings everything together, as well as it's got a reminders component, so you got reminders built in. So I
Oh,
couldn't
love
recommend that enough. um, for notes, I use a system called Agenda, and I think it's available, I think, on the web, and again, Apple devices, and I'm sure Windows too. But it's basically a contextual note system. So when you're basically every note is tied to a calendar event. So if you and I were
it.
meeting,
Ah,
it would automatically create a note for, like, Kevin and Z's chat, and then I could write notes down for that. And then it would basically, within this note system, it would have a profile for you at all of our times we've ever chatted and all the notes associated to it. Because what I found is I had notes and they were just like all over the place. And,
right, 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 right.
and oftentimes I would have like for each contact have a different note, but then they got so long and half the information was outdated. So I wanted a way to search, and so that app gave it to me, and I couldn't recommend it enough.
I need to look into that because I feel like that's a little bit of my broken system. Like I use like Asana and different things, like having that sort of conceptual thing where it's like one person tied to multiple conversations, being able to reference things, whether it's from another email address or whatever it is, and kind of labeling things in that way automatically. I definitely have to look into that because right now I'm very organized, but I'm also at times very disorganized. And that's what, like, one of my big pet peeves is like things falling through the cracks and getting back to people, or having context of like when I'm having those meetings, like tying in emails and notes and different things to make sure that it's all in like one thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say the last app I would mention is probably my favorite app of all time, and I don't know if a lot of people know about it. It's on iPhone, so if anyone's listening, they're on Android. Do you have Android or your iPhone?
I'm an iPhone guy.
Okay, there you go. So you'll appreciate it. It's an app called Due. It's DUE, and this app,
DE. Okay.
DUE, yeah, like do, like something's due. And this app is the best reminders app I've ever had. What it
Okay.
does basically, and it's a really simple premise, but it just annoys you until you do something. So I'll set a reminder there, like, send Z an email at 5 o'clock on Friday. You just type it in, it grabs all the
Okay.
data and it just puts in a reminder at 5 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, it'll notify you. And the key thing is, it will continue to notify you until you complete it. So like with the default reminders app, it'll usually say, okay, 5 o'clock, sends you an email. And if you just like, oh yeah, just dismiss it, it's gone. You won't realize, you just forget about it. This one, if you just dismiss it, it'll ping you every 5 minutes, and you can set it to every 1 minute. So it just keeps pinging you. And and what's nice about it is it'll ask you, say, hey, would you like to do this another time? And you could say, yeah, delay this a week, delay this a day, and it will delay it. But then it just continually notifies you. And I can tell you, I never forget anything anymore, because it continually pokes you and reminds you to do it. So I would, sounds annoying, but it works. I would download that app if I was you or anyone listening and you have struggled to remember to do things.
Okay, so it's
It's
this one right here, right?
Yeah, it's like $5 or something like that. Yeah,
Okay,
that's the one.
I will definitely put that into my. I'm gonna download that shit right away, because
Yeah,
that's one thing I see with the reminders app with Apple, and I feel like they're just so slow to fix things. Like sometimes I'm like, I have the Notes app and then I have the reminders app. I almost have to remind myself to go back to my Notes app on certain things and emails
yeah,
and all this other stuff. No, dude, this is really, really helpful. I truly appreciate it, because I'm always, like I said, there's so many tools out there, so many tools, and I'm always like, oh, maybe this will work, and I use it for a couple of days. I'm like, like this is just not what I wanted. So it's always good to hear that somebody that that's working on a very kind of multitask environment as well has found something that actually works. So no, I'm definitely going to download it and check it out, dude. Thank you so much for that.
yeah. My pleasure. Yeah, and
Uh,
and just to disclose, I do not get any sort of kickback from that. I'm just a huge fan. I'm just a huge fan.
I love it. I love it. No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. And it was truly a pleasure chatting with you about everything. And I love what you guys are doing at Sezzle. And like I said, I will make sure to keep going on with this, and make sure that a lot of our merchants jump on Sezzle, because obviously nowadays I think it's more helpful than any other time. So thank you for that, and thanks for always kind of keeping an open door with everything when you were over at Bold and now at Sezzle and all this other stuff. So thank you for that, man, and it's always a pleasure chatting with you. And yeah, man, thank you.
Yeah, Z. And if anyone has any questions, or wants to reach out about what partnerships like, thinking about getting into it, or has questions about the tools that I mentioned, feel free to drop me a line anytime. You can put my email in the show notes or what have you, and
Yeah,
always an open
well,
book.
are you on Twitter and stuff as well? Do you prefer to kind of for people to reach out to you on there as well?
I'm pretty much a no social media guy. I use
Oh,
a
love
tiny
it.
little bit, but I'm pretty, yeah. I don't have Facebook. I don't check Instagram, and I don't really check Twitter either. I have that's one thing when I decided to write that book, I'm like, I had to give up social media to do it. So that's what I did.
Oh,
But yeah,
good job, man. Good job.
email's the best way to reach me.
Okay, awesome. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well, and people can reach out to you and and get in touch with you. And if anybody, I'll also put my email. If anybody wants to get in touch with Kevin, I'll make sure to do that. So, thanks again, man. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and thanks again for doing this, man. It's a real pleasure.
My pleasure, Z. Take care.
All right, cheers, brother.